Welcome back to Brevity Box, brought to you by the Ruminations Radio Network. We are here with episode 007. That'll mean more in a few minutes. Got a lot to talk about, of course. And this is being recorded on December 4th, Friday. And man, I am counting the minutes until this year is over. I am ready for 2021. Brando, what is up? How's it going, man?
It's going. Glad it's the weekend. Had a long, frustrating week at the old office, but that's life. Could be worse. There's a lot of people without jobs right now, so I shouldn't bitch.
Me either. I mean, what working at Spacely Sprockets has got job security is what you're telling me?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy. I mean, we're always starting there, right? We're still, I hate to tell everybody and describe the water we're all kind of sinking in, but obviously COVID's still a thing, getting to be more of a thing across the country because Americans are willful, and they're going to do what they're going to do, especially with all the failures in messaging and whatnot. We won't go too deep into that, but people are sick. Hospitals are getting overwhelmed. I think I've said it a few times, but, obviously wear the fucking mask, but, no, not trying to scare everybody, just trying to say, keep the hospitals from getting overwhelmed so that when people get sick, they can go get treated. It's pretty simple. The mask is a very small thing to ask, and it's not hard to do.
But my freedoms.
Yeah, you can look good wearing a mask.
You're infringing on my First Amendment right
to spread the word of disease.
Sure.
I mean, that's the thing, right? If it's almost like they're spreading the good word. Like, what would you call it if there was a Jehovah's Witness of COVID and pandemic? What would you call them? What kind of witness would it be?
Plague enthusiasts.
Plague enthusiast needs to be a group on Twitter. # plague enthusiast.
Yeah, considering I just found out today someone that I know and care for very much had a positive test. So I'm just kind of pissed off at the world right now about this whole thing.
Oh no. Anybody we know? Anybody I know?
We'll talk later.
Oh my. Is it the person I'm first thinking of?
No.
Okay. That doesn't make me feel that much better. That sucks. That sucks to hear about that.
Asymptomatic
man.
So far, but I just found out today.
Right. Well, yeah. I think that's a lot of it. I think, again, I know I mentioned it on the last episode talking about the high school versus pro league debacle that was New Orleans at Denver with basically the water boy. They took Bobby Boucher off the bench and tried to get him to throw the ball. That was, this thing is affecting a lot of people because even in that context, you have pro athletes that are not following protocol and you end up with it. It's just not as entertaining, man. And I mean, that's not saying much. I mean, Taysom Hill didn't look, the Saints quarterback did not look much better than the Denver quarterback. Thank God we have good running game. But it's weird to see how many people that we know are getting it, spreading it around. I still think that it's a little bit odd, and it says a lot about us that football players are getting multiple tests a week, but nursing staff across the country aren't. And I don't know, how did your friend catch it? Do they know?
I haven't asked too many questions.
You think it was work, or do you think it was a social related thing?
Honestly, I have no idea. Could have been either one. It's not somebody I work. Like I said, we'll talk more after we hit the stop button.
Yeah, okay.
For the sake of anonymity.
No, I got you. That's fair. It brings back that point I was making at the beginning. We're just counting the minutes until the weirdest New Year and holiday season of probably any of our lives, and ready to get into 2021, ready to get rid of Trumbull Thin Skin and get him out and, try to get a new thing happening. Hopefully it sounds like things are going in the right direction.
I don't know, man. They're going to, Sidney Powell's going to release the Kraken any day now or some shit.
The Kraken needs an editor, right? She had to recently refine her claims about what was going on. I mean, isn't this the boy who cried wolf? I mean, didn't we grow up on this story where now we've got 35 or 32? I mean, you lose count how many things are debunked or
Last
not,
time I checked,
you
it was
know.
1 in 31.
Well, and the one was really
They're
nothing.
they are Detroit Lionsing the shit out of this thing.
Let's fire Matt Patricia again.
Yeah, there you go. Good idea.
It's a good way to do it. Let's
Yeah,
just blame him. Now, it seems weird, right? It seems like I had this kind of thought that maybe things really started going crazy in this country after Tom Clancy passed away. Like he went up to heaven and sort of took over the business because everything seems to be working kind of like a Clancy novel,
it's
right?
after Fed
You
Smoker died, man. It's all happened after Fed
it's all
Smoker
Fed
died.
Smoker for YMH fans. If you're not a fan of Your Mom's House, uh, if you want to go to seedy depths that you didn't think you'd find funny, try listening to Your Mom's House.
And
Just look
watch
up
their
who
live
Fed Smoker
shows if you
was.
just want to die a little
Oh,
on the inside.
you want to scar your subconscious for the rest of your life? Watch the live show for sure. But no, I mean, I think about it, right? I mean, this does kind of read like a poor man's Clancy novel. You've got a wannabe sort of dictator-ish kind of person. He's got a spy in the Justice Department that's been banned from the building, right? You've got a psychopath attorney out there uh, talking about the Kraken. Great movie reference, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And not being able to prove anything.
And at the
And
head of it all, we got drunk Uncle Rudy, who was melting on live
man,
television.
I want to get to that. Yeah, the melting thing we covered is totally, we did that last
I
episode. But
I just
go
want to
ahead.
say this about the court motion Sidney Powell Fox. I was able to pull it up online because a lot of the shit is public record.
Right.
Um, it was page 2 when they started tying this shit somehow to Hugo Chavez.
I know, man. It's just birdseed to these to hungry mouths. It's kind of it's the thing that caught my attention surrounding Georgia and Sidney Powell, and kind of going back to the Boy Who Cried Wolf reference. It's that now you've got a clear push in the GOP against itself. You've got a group of people that buy into the whole narrative of things being rigged, and Hugo Chavez reaches his zombie hand out from the grave to kind of turn things pro Biden. Okay. And you now have a place where, with the runoff coming in early January, a lot of the same people that were out there that are still very much pro the sitting president now, they don't believe that they should vote in something that's rigged. And now they're kind of having to live by this whole thing. They're having to, I mean, even in their own people talking to a room full of their supporters are saying that they are not going to come out and support them. And you've got, I forget, Romney's niece, I think, was it Rhonda McDaniel? Rhonda McDaniel is
Ron
the,
Daniel, yes.
yeah. So she's there trying to walk this weird tightrope because she doesn't want to bash the boy who's crying wolf necessarily, and at the same time she needs them to come out and support the candidates they want to put in the Senate. And those people are listening to the president and Sidney Powell, and some Georgia whack job Southern attorney, which I absolutely love the statement from the man that "we ain't stupid" is like, that shirt needs to be sold. They're petitioning those very same people not to show up, not to do it, really pushing that narrative hard. It The disconnect between Sidney Powell being let go officially from the legal staff from Trump and still out there campaigning for this thing. I mean, it is shocking to think that now they're having to like deal with the ramifications of that kind of narrative and dishonesty. And
It's
I'm
it's
stunned.
almost like the kind of people like on Tiger King that keep big cats and then suddenly get surprised when the cats try to eat them.
Isn't this the year of Tiger King? I mean, that's really
I,
kind of
I
fits everything.
I saw an article, and I may be getting the details wrong. Please feel free to correct me if you know, about someone trying to basically buy a pardon from the Trump administration. And deep down inside, I'm just praying, please let it be Joe Exotic.
Hey, they said this was interesting, right? Because I mean, what are you? I have to save a little bit of this because it's one of those other things that I wouldn't have expected. Bill Barr, somebody I have a lot of issues with, Attorney General, comes
Boston
out and
ass looking
says,
motherfucker.
"Yeah," to be kind,
Yeah.
and he's saying no evidence of, he's going against the president's narrative and pushing out his spies that were seeking information and pressuring people inside the DOJ, and also conducting these investigations into the solicitation for pardons that involves people very close in network to the president. The Tom Clancy novel. I mean, straight up, it's part Tom Clancy novel, and then on the other side of it,
No,
it's
I got it. Let me. This
lay
is
it on
equal
me.
parts Tom Clancy, equal parts Confederacy of Dunces.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of Julia Louise Dreyfus and Veep because when she commented on why they had a trouble at towards the end of the show because it's difficult to write comedy.
Yeah, I mean that last season
I
was
mean,
awful because you can't outdo what we're dealing with in the world right now.
the absurd you can't be absurdist when everything is more absurd in reality.
I don't know how the onion hasn't gone under by now.
Yeah, what are they? Do you know how? I don't even know how I would deal with that difficulty. And it's kind of what I was getting to too. It's part Tom Clancy, part SNL, and on the other side of the legal debacle with Sidney Powell, you've got, like you said, Tutti Rudy Giuliani,
Use
literally
it. You
farting on
show
mic.
him respect. Use his proper name, Drunk Uncle Rudy.
Drunk Uncle Rudy is passing gas audibly in a House Oversight Committee hearing in Michigan. I I mean, it is the most. It would be bad if it were a bit on SNL. You would think that's a little sophomoric. You need to try harder.
Well, I mean,
But it's real.
it's not as bad as that time that Jerry Nadler definitely shit himself standing next to Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, that's a callback. But you're right. You're absolutely right. And the some of the IT people that he brought on. I mean, look, if you believe in the phrase "you can't bullshit a bullshitter," these people were completely trying to bullshit, and one in specific who I do not know the name of and don't want to, but this blonde in
Oh yeah,
glasses and the
they were
just
doing
the
shots before this hearing.
it certainly seemed that way. But here you have the imagery of it is straight out of a character of SNL, right? You've got the ripped fashion style jeans with the high heel pumps. She looks like she has a bump it in her hair, which the only reason I know that is because of an old Tina Fey bit where she was mocking Sarah Palin. For those of you who don't know, this look it up, hilarious. But then the voice, the intonation, the cadence, the way this person's talking, it feels like a bit from, and pardon me if I get her name wrong, but Cicely Strong, is that her name from
Well,
SNL?
yeah, I believe so.
The girl you wish you hadn't started a conversation with is unbelievably spot on. And I mean, once we have our Instagram up and running, we'll be posting these links. But my favorite phrase, and I love phrases like that miss the point. Like in Pineapple Express, it was like the monkey's out of the bottle, you can't put it back in. I love
Mm-hmm.
that one. For all intents and purposes, hilarious, mind bottling, like when your thoughts are all trapped up in a bottle. What's the one from Friends? The point is moo. It doesn't mean anything, like a
I mean,
cow's opinion.
I've seen every season of the Trailer Park Boys. I got plenty of these.
I love these. And
Worst case
hers,
Ontario.
worst case Ontario, take off the blindfold and listen to what I'm saying is my favorite one.
Get
And then
two
from
birds stoned at once.
and my Chappelle favorite is some people like cucumber better pickle. I
Huh?
love that.
Huh?
What? I love doing that shit live to pull that off dry to people. It just it's unreal that in something that they try to posture up as this serious threat and fraud and it's rigged, they lose in every sense. They can't be legitimate in a court of law. They have no grounds to stand on. And the only point is to keep people, it's three card Monty. And for those who are willing to buy in, he just wants to keep their attention long enough that he can get them to pay for a membership model when he starts his own news network or takes over Newsmax. And I don't know whether to be mad at the people that believe it or to feel sorry for them that
Bad.
they're being deceived. I think kind of 50-50. I feel bad that they're being conned so clearly and roughly. And it's like on the other side of it, you got to know that people started taking it seriously when it started affecting their team. When you start seeing football on a Wednesday afternoon,
That happened?
that happened.
I'm so out of touch.
Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and this is a divisional rival game. This is a game that has importance in the league, shifted because of their locker room. The couple of their running backs, I believe, they tested positive for COVID, so they moved the game. Initially, move it to Tuesday, move it to Wednesday, and I think because of that move, they canceled Thursday night football. It's There are people who don't know anything about politics. There are people who don't know anything about medicine or virology, and nor should they, right? But just if you're a sports fan, something's up, right?
Yeah.
Something's going on. It's tough. It's tough to get a grasp on. I don't know. As always, we had to start with some of those current events.
We had to tiptoe around the dark places, we call it.
And we'll come back to it. Other things that I've been paying attention to. Are movie theaters dying, man? Are movie theaters going to be a thing in a year?
They better not.
I'm
Look, I
just
mean,
saying.
I saw an art. No, I did read about how I think all Warner Brothers movies are going to be streamed on HBO Max when they're released in theaters in 2021 for like a month.
Well, that's what
And
I'm talking
I'm
about.
kind of cool with that because there are some things I wouldn't have paid money to see in the first place. But for
Right.
example, I don't care how bad this is. When Dune comes into theaters, I'm going to find an IMAX. I'll go see it, and then I'll quarantine for 2 weeks. I don't, I don't care. I'm
I'm
seeing that in a
with you,
movie
man.
theater.
I love that. No, I'm with you. But I think that's kind of where it's going. It's not going to be the same as it was where people are going to pile in. Like truly, it may have been that Avengers Endgame is the last
I
big movie title that we're going to see in a theater like that. And
don't
I'm
know.
not sure I'm upset about it. I
I
love
wonder
the
how.
screen, but you know,
I wonder how stubborn they're going to be about No Time to Die, the new Bond movie.
oh man, what a great
But
segue onto this
what
one.
I will say though is the loft down here in Tucson, Arizona, is doing I think that they have some sort of virtual theater thing I've seen on their social media pages. I haven't looked into it too much, but they're also doing outdoor screenings of movies, which they're probably gonna have to stop soon because it's actually getting cold. You know,
Right.
relatively cold for Tucson, but they're doing what they can to stay in business, and I appreciate it. And I don't know, maybe if a few big movie chains go out of business, and maybe more smaller artsy or local things like the Loft or Roadhouse can spring up
Roadhouse
in their
theaters,
wake,
yeah.
fine by me.
Yeah, right. Like big leather recliners, waiter service,
No
and
kids.
a little bit of social distancing, and no kids. Yeah, it's a better way to watch a movie if they can combine that with a bit of the IMAX and get some of that big theater feel. I'll be all over it. Or it could be the return of the drive-in. I mean, a modern drive-in might not be a bad thing if you
I
really
mean,
think
I
about it.
know some comedians and musicians are actually doing drive-in tours right now, so there's obviously a market. We all watched
Yeah,
Biden's acceptance speech. He was basically a drive-in.
shout out to Tom Segura, Burnt Chrysler, and all
Yeah,
those guys that are
except
out there
old
doing it.
Tommy Buns has broken a couple bones recently. He had to have some surgery.
Oh my, I did not realize.
To my understanding, he and Burt Chrysler, who smells really bad and has weird things with dogs, um, they were playing some basketball for a segment on one of their shows, and Tom broke something in a lower extremity and something in an upper extremity. Had to have surgery. Ten
Oh
bucks
my.
says he did, the fat boy come down from a jump shot on one foot and compound fractured his fib and tib.
I think Burnt got upset he was getting beat and just went psycho on him and pushed him down. That's what I'm saying.
Mm.
I'm calling that. So I want to drop back to Bond for a second.
Oh yes,
Who
yes,
is
yes.
the evil organization in Bond that was trying to I forget the name now.
Parlor.
No,
Da-dum-tsh.
Parlor.
That's something we got to talk about too, though. But
Okay,
spec.
we'll do that too. I'm going to segue here because it's
Are,
episode 007.
real quick though, are we talking about the books or the current movies?
The current movies. Well, it'd be the old movies too, right? It's the same
No,
one.
I mean, but
Spectre.
well,
Spectre.
you're thinking Smirsh, or maybe I am confusing it with the books. But yeah, Spectre. It was
Yeah,
Smirsh in at least the first couple books. Spectre in the movies.
I think we need somebody who has deep knowledge of all things British, and it's going to bring us to our guest, which I think I was saying this a second ago. I did not plan this,
Bullshit.
but having it be episode 007 is so fitting.
Totally planned it.
Totally accidental. We're the this gentleman, good buddy, friend of both of ours for a long time. We'll get into why we invited him and whatnot, but suffice it to say, he is one of the more interesting friends of mine. And we're glad to have him. We're going to bring him on here to talk about all this Bond, movies, politics. He's got a unique perspective. I want to welcome him to the show. We're going to redact some of the information from his life, for his and our safety. Uh, let's just say Agent G, or we'll call him Graeme for short. Graeme, thanks for coming on. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Brevity Box. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Charlie and Brando. Great to be chatting with you guys.
If I had the music, man, I'd be playing it right now. You'd hear it. Get you straight walking in. We'd have the little tunnel shot. You firing your pistol at the camera. I
Yeah,
mean,
if I'd have known, I could have got my trombone out, and that's not a euphemism. So
no. For
It
you, it
is
could mean
and it
both.
isn't.
It could
yeah,
mean both things. It can be
yeah,
two things here. So I think the accent says it all on why we're trying to say 007, Graeme. I mean, clearly you're not from Russia. Uh,
no, no, indeed not. I was born in deepest Alabama, as I'm sure you can tell. But no, I mean, yeah, from the UK, obviously, and love to be there. But been in the United States now since 2009 permanently, so like 11 years or so. And how time flies. But I was just
and
wondering,
we
you're talking about the UK thing. I'm like, should I just like talk normally, or should I ham up the accent like I do to talk to the girls on Friday night? I don't know, but
you know what? Maybe a little of both. You're just gonna have to pick on the topic.
yeah.
Before we kind of get into all the depth of it, let's start by you've been here listening to our conversation back and forth. Did anything catch your ear that you wanted to chime in on? We've kind of covered some of the COVID, some of the politic, some of the court cases, and you have a sort of obviously unique perspective. You don't have to be as embarrassed as some of us are that have been here and are from here natively. Um, Anything catch your mind on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the main part is just around the COVID. I think that's what resonated with me most because I follow quite a lot still. Obviously, what's going on in the UK. That's where I came from, and I like to make sure that things are going on okay over there as they are here. And I think probably the most interesting difference, I guess, between the UK and here has been the leadership. I guess through COVID, actually, it's kind of interesting that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister over there, has kind of screwed up pretty royally over there as well in terms of a lot of his responses to COVID and how he's been doing it. But at least since he was sick and at least since he understood what the virus could do, there's been a level of humility, I would say, from him, which just hasn't been the same over here from the leadership, shall we say?
Yeah, what's that
And
like?
and it's interesting, and
Well, go
but
ahead.
he's yeah, he's definitely not he's not the person that you would say is number one star in the UK right now either. And there's a lot of people that are not supportive of him, basically from the Brexit point of view. And we could probably do a whole show just on Brexit, but I don't want to do that to anybody. But
No, we could. We
but
definitely
with
could.
the COVID thing, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he's struggled with that as well, and I think he's struggled. But you can see the struggle within him, in my mind, anyway. That he's struggling with how to deal with a deadly virus, and yet how to keep the economy going. Whereas over here, that struggle doesn't seem to exist. I think those are my differences.
Well, yeah, no, clearly. And I think maybe tell me if you'd agree with me on this or not. In talking to some people that ask why I think things went the way they did with the election, I kind of juxtapose the concept that if, you know, when the president had gotten sick with COVID, if he had come out of the hospital with humility and anything like what you, even a feigned bad impression of what Boris Johnson pulled off in the UK, I really do think it would have sealed another 4 years for him if he had shown any humanity in that moment and sort of acknowledgement that things were not going in the right direction. I think a lot of people would have been more supportive, and maybe to both of them, I feel like it's almost like this allegory tale about the seven deadly sins, right? Here is where pride and ego are a real fucking problem, you know, and like they can't stop because of that sort of thing. And I mean, I don't think Boris Johnson is anywhere near the narcissist that our president is, although they do seem to have the same fondness for hairstyles like that.
Well, if you're talking
Who
about deadly sins, they do both have sloth going for them, I guess. So,
Yeah, pretty much right.
I have a very important question. I need to interject here. Out of the three, who has the worst haircut? Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, Mark Davis, owner of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Ooh,
That's a tough one, isn't it?
ooh. We got to rank these. Okay, I'm gonna say I kind of like the punk feel of Boris Johnson's hair. I feel like Davis looks a bit more sad, and I feel like, man, I just feel like there's just a dumpster full of disposed Aquanet cans behind the White House.
but I mean,
I,
does the Las Vegas owner, is that really his own hair? I don't know. It doesn't
Yeah,
look
it
like
is.
it. Is it really?
He travels for and pays good money for that haircut.
Wow. Well, Jesus Christ. That's just I'm just going to go with that because it looks so much like a toupee. But there you go.
It makes him look like someone that pets the rabbits a little too hard, if you catch my drift.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It really good analogy there of you know, that's an Of Mice and Men reference for
I went
those of you who
Steinbeck on
haven't
you.
listened.
Yeah.
Yeah, you went deep, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
you
how
know,
I
we
do.
were talking a little bit about the COVID, of course, and we kind of glanced on some of the sports. You're a Green Bay Packers fan, which you're going to have to explain live here in just a few minutes, but being that you're going through this season, your team's doing exceptionally well. I mean, does it feel different to you? I'm sure it does. I mean, we've talked. The league doesn't feel the same. It's not as interesting. It's not as dramatic. It's not as entertaining. It's just odd. Wouldn't you
No, it
agree?
is. And I think it's odd with anything where fans no longer are a part of it. I mean, sports in many ways exist because of the fans. And so the NFL, college, I mean, even as you know, I'm obviously follow uh, very much the Premier League in the United Kingdom, right? The soccer
Mm-hmm.
English Premier League, and the same when you've got empty stadiums, they're saying that a lot of sports people are just not able to get themselves going for a game when there's nobody there cheering. It's like a glorified practice session.
Right.
It's
The energy's not there.
the
It's like
energy's
an
not there, and there
exhibition,
are
not a
some
proper game.
right.
Yeah.
And some people are able to create their own energy, but some people really aren't. They feed off the crowd, and I think that's what you're seeing in the NFL, bringing it back over here and to the football. That people are just not able to create that kind of energy. So you're seeing a kind of flat game, even though there are still stars and experts of their profession going at it. But it's just the energy's not there. So that's the difference in the feeling, I think. And then, like you were saying, a game being played on Wednesday afternoon, that just seemed kind of dumb to me, really. And then I was flicking back and forth on some games on Sunday and seeing the Denver quarterback in inverted commas, basically, yeah. I mean, I just don't even know what to say because it wasn't even a game, really.
I felt bad for the guy. I mean, I respect him for getting out there and doing what he can, but I mean, it was again, it feels like a bad comedy script, right? It feels like a premise to a, Necessary Roughness or The Water Boy or any of these sort of, tongue in cheek absurd comedies. It's kind of affected comedy in a weird way too. I think in a time where we need as much distraction and entertainment, it's really difficult to produce it in a way that makes you kind of you can't compare it to the real world and think, oh, this is outlandish, this will never happen. It's right in front of you.
Well, I mean, that wide receiver, playing quarterback for the Denver Broncos, I had a flashback to the movie Not Another Teen Movie, which is a terrible movie, but it's kind of funny. And that part of it was taking the piss out of the movie Rudy. Uh, the guy catches a ball in the end zone, and like these two huge 300-pound guys come and like split him in half. I was like, that's probably what's going to happen to this poor quarterback at some point.
Oh man, it looked like it too.
Yeah.
It really did. He got, and they were nice to him. He still looked like he got a bit abused. Um, you know,
I'm sorry,
I
hang on.
think.
The Saints defense
That,
was being nice to a quarterback.
Yeah.
oh man, here
No,
we go.
no bounty
Here we
gate.
go,
Moving on.
Vikings
Back on
fan.
topic.
So, Graham, the interesting thing for me that, it's important to note that you are now a citizen. You're an American.
American.
And congratulations, by the way. That's
Thank you very
pretty
much.
awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm really happy to
That's,
be it.
I mean, are you, I got to ask, are you a secret agent from Her Majesty's MI6 here to destroy the American government? Because a lot of this started going south when you started going through that process, Graham.
Yeah, I know. I truly am the Trojan horse of all Trojan horses. And as soon as I signed up, and when they knew that I was coming to vote, it all went wrong from there, right?
It, well, it does kind of open up some avenue for me to ask for some perspective here because of your country of origin, and like you were alluding to a moment ago, you know, and sort of referencing what we started with, hearing, now that you're a citizen, hearing the president talk about the election being rigged, and not just the fact of that narrative being there, it's how that's playing out. This isn't like a piece of history like 2001 or 2000 election with Bush Gore. This is not about a hanging Chad and going to the Supreme Court.
It's a lot more than like 520 some votes.
Well, and a lot more than just one state. But being from the UK, coming here, going through everything that it took to become a citizen, has it, I guess it's sort of an open-ended question. I want to say, how has it affected your perspective? Are you as defensive as I tend to be? I get very, I kind of conceptualize that the world is just like he's just dragging our reputation through the mud by saying these things. But I assume that people can see the ridiculous nature of these court cases and the way that they're being thrown out and failing and not really being based on merit. And unfortunately, you sort of represent the other side of the pond for the moment. Like what you're paying attention to it. I know you read as much news as I do. What are you coming away with seeing all this activity from people like Sidney Powell and what's going on in Georgia and Michigan and Rudy Giuliani melting away on camera?
Yeah, well, I mean, fundamentally, what's kind of really interesting to me is you go back to my ceremony in April of last year in 2019, and the judge who presided over the swearing in ceremony, and we had to take the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. We had the national anthem. We had actually 23 different countries that were represented. 50 people were at the ceremony, and 23 different countries represented. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Um, but
Sure.
um, but if he said it once, he said it 10 times. The judge, he was like, now that you've become a citizen, go out and vote. He says, your number one right as an American citizen is to go vote, to have your voice heard. And so, and actually, when you left the ceremony, they actually had somebody right there. You could go fill in the forms and sign up, and and become a registered voter. And I mean, that's huge, right? And that was one of the
Yeah.
big things because, like, before then, as you know, I was here on work visas, and then also on a green card, and I had to have my green card for 5 years before I become a citizen, before I could apply to become a citizen, because those are the rules that I came in under. And through all of those times, I'm paying tax, so taxation without representation. So go figure, it came full circle, right? So,
And that's you dunking on us. Thank you,
Well,
Graham.
yeah,
thank you for
so
not going to the harbor and throwing in a bunch of Budweiser.
yeah, so Uncle Sam, you're welcome. But no, absolutely. But then, like, along comes citizenship, and here I am, and I go out and vote, and I think it's just so. I mean, it's just disappointing. It's sad. However you want to do it, I don't get angry about the about what's going on in the courts and all that type of thing. I think it's sad. I think it's disappointing. I think it's it's those emotions that I have about the fact you're taking basically the reason why all of the people who want to come to America come to America. All of these 23 nations that were represented at the ceremony that I was at was about, we want to be able to come and have our voice heard. And if I may, I could just go on to a little story
Please.
from
Mhm.
from that ceremony that resonated with me, because at the end of the ceremony, when we'd done all of our pledging of allegiance and taken the oath of allegiance and all of those types of things, the judge invited a number of people to come up and say, "Hey, why don't you come and tell us your story?" And I've thought, well, my story isn't much one to tell, right? I'm from the UK. My story to get to America was pretty straightforward. But some of the people that were there, and the two that resonated with me, two brothers from Iraq, who were at the same ceremony. And for all of the good or bad, however you want to talk about how Trump has run the country over the last 4 years, and so this was a year, 18 months or so ago, so 2.5 years in, they basically stood up there and they said, it has been our lifelong dream to come to America. You know, when we were back home, we were living in a regime where you were not allowed to speak your word or speak your mind. You were not allowed to speak out against leadership. You were not be able to participate in democratic elections. And so our idea was to come to America where our voice could be heard and we could be part of a greater good. And so when you hear their story, and you know, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, the fact that Trump even got elected was terrible." Well, no, he was democratically elected, right? And so,
Yeah.
good, bad, or indifferent, he was democratically elected.
Yeah.
Joe Biden has now
Mhm.
been democratically elected. The fact that you call that into question is calling into question the very basis of why freedom exists, if you like. And I thought it was interesting. Maybe it was interesting to talk about those guys who came over here from Iraq to say this is why we came to America. So I wonder what they're thinking right now.
We know you've been scared watching horror movies by yourself. Well, now you don't have to. Hang out with Ruminations of Red Rum, all things horror from movies to the latest spooky games we've played. Come hang out. But hurry, the killer's behind you!
Yeah, I would wonder what they were thinking too. And it is it you know, I guess the thing that gets me upset is I feel like the thing that is missed by very you know, I don't want to be unkind to anyone, but for people who are either knowingly or unknowingly unaware of how the world sees America, I think that's a great representation of the way that I believe we are intended to uh, be seen by those two individuals from Iraq. I think that the thing that gets me upset is for those who would want to demean anything about us. This is the fuel for, without going into naming names, I think we kind of have a good idea of who is out there wanting to make us besmirch the good name of the country and democracy as we see it. That's what gets me bothered, is that there's no consideration from a large group of Americans that are just sort of unaware that this is exactly the kind of fuel they want for their own, you know, propaganda and word of mouth. And like the regime that those gentlemen came from, you can imagine that the people that are in charge of that regime are saying, look, see,
Oh yeah.
Why, why would you, it's not real, it's really going to affect lives of people that many good hard working Americans will never meet or know of, right? And
Well, then you can
that's what
also,
gets me bothered.
yeah, and you can also like understand like some of the areas of the world, like, kind of like exactly what you said. Maybe I'm just emphasizing the point without mentioning particular countries, but it's
Yeah,
pretty obvious, right? They can say, "Hey, well, look at democracy in action, right? Is this what you really want, or do you want us to just tell you how it's going to work?"
right.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when you're trying to basically call into question the democratic process, I think you're on a very slippery slope. But
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure it'll all get figured out. It doesn't make it look good, but I think things will. Well, I was going to say return to normal, but who the hell knows what that is anymore after this year? So
Well, so, going back to where I started with those examples, it almost feels a bit serendipity with the comedic absurdity that is on television with these oversight. It's now, like, what a weird time we live in, where 5 years ago everybody on Twitter and Facebook was, they would not watch a House Oversight Committee hearing, and now it's the source of great comedy. And if anything, I think it almost does us a favor, right? The fact that it looks so absurd. And also, I said this on the last episode, and I think it bears repeating. I would have never thought that I would have been so grateful for judges, for just the court system, and Republican judges, to be frank, because they're the ones throwing these cases out with great disdain. They're the ones sort of holding the line and making it clear. And to be, you look at how these would-be attorneys are handling themselves in the court of law. I think it all comes down to Giuliani saying this is not a fraud case, you know uh, just right there in the court documents. And I'm grateful for it. It feels like amidst all the chaos, the system is actually holding, right? And even with Bill Barr, that example is crazy to me, but here's a guy I don't agree with on 99% of what he's done, but even that person seems to have one, like like line of honesty in him that won't let him go past like a bridge too far. So I don't know, something relieving about that for me, that it is kind of holding there. And I think it's starting to look more absurd. Like, I think it's just not, it doesn't look legitimate at all. It might have started and sounded like it a few weeks ago, but at this point it just looks a little comedic and silly, and I think that's a good thing.
yeah, I mean, what are you saying, Charlie? You're saying that maybe the founding fathers actually had their shit together and knew what they were doing?
Hey, but listen, right? I mean, isn't it sort of odd that that's kind of this, I'm not typically a hey the system works guy, but in I want to give credit where credit's due, and I'm grateful that it's not going further and being propagated by these people who are in real positions of power, and the court system's working. And it's not, if it were democratic judges across the board, I think I might feel like it was more assailable, but now it's not. And I don't think they have any fuel. Like, that fire's getting smaller.
I mean, it's not
There's
only
not
that,
any
it's a
more
lot
wood
of
to throw
Trump
on it.
appointed judges doing this too.
Yeah, true, true,
Yeah.
true. So much for his wannabe loyalties. So okay, I wanted to cover some of that. I think we can move off of some of the deep political talk.
Avoid the
uh
dark place.
yeah, avoid the dark place. Graeme, you and I met each other a long time before you relocated to the States. And I'm so interested in a lot of your story. I think we should start by, without going into too much detail, what, you kind of give an example of these two gentlemen. Clearly, they come from a hard regime and they wanted to come to a place where their voice was heard. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the regime you came from in the UK, and what instigated that from boyhood, because you've had a a good upbringing. You're an educated and cultural gentleman.
Well,
You know
thank
what?
you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get to those things being presented to everybody else, but I think that's pretty fair statement. I'm not trying to blow too much beautiful silky smoke up your ass, but you know, what was what would you say is the first, like, I guess I won't try to get you to boil it down to one reason, but why become American? Like, why go from the UK and become a citizen?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question, and it's a lot of it's down to, I mean, it's like you said, it's really hard to put kind of like one reason on it. I think what I could almost argue that my entire life has been about eventually coming here. I don't know, through some
Hmm.
strange realm, but even from early in my career. I got the opportunity a year after I finished college to go out to the United Arab Emirates, which is
Yeah,
kind of random, and will migrate to the American dream in a little while. But I mean, I think for me, it was just always about getting out there and traveling and seeing the world. And so I got the opportunity a year out of college. My company that I was working from at the time said, "Hey, we're going to pay you a bunch of extra cash if you want to go to the UAE." And I'm like, well, fuck, where do I sign up, right? It's like that's not
sure.
complicated
Why not?
when you're a year out of college, right? To go and get like a double your salary essentially to go and live in a place of hardship, which really wasn't that much of a hardship, really. Anyway, I mean, there are many things you could and could not do, of course, but even so, I'm just kind of like I was out there. And then when I came back, I mean, I think in some ways though it's interesting. It's just the decisions and the choices that you make during your life that shape it. I say maybe I was always destined to come here, but I probably wasn't until I, got my most recent job with an American company in the UK, and just got the opportunity to start to travel. And I think what's interesting to me is um, Tucson, Arizona. That's really what drew me in, and that's kind of interesting because a lot of people are like, "Why the hell did you leave London to go to Tucson? Like, what kind of
Right.
like what's actually wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Well, you got to remember. I mean, I was, I like the open spaces, and I'm pretty sure I was like a saguaro or something in some previous afterlife because I love the desert. I was just out hiking today in amongst the saguaros, and it was just great. It was peaceful. It was just outside, outdoors." Now, in the UK, I found was very claustrophobic in my mind. I mean, I grew up on the east coast of the UK, and so that was a lot more, village life, rural England. But college and every time since college, I've lived more in the towns, in the cities, and I just needed some open space. There's too many people in the UK as far as I come. And you come to like Arizona to the southwest, there's just more open spaces. There's just more sky. There's more sun. There's more.
Big sky. Yeah,
Yeah.
And
I've
really
said
good
that.
Mexican food.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
well,
well, authentic.
yeah.
Yeah, I've said that to people here. I live in New Orleans, for the reminder for everybody listening, um, who ask me, why would you want to live there? Why would you want to live there? In fact, my sister used to constantly,
No
like,
natural
why?
disasters.
Yeah, very true. Very easy to live there, but I think Arizona is always um special for people who discover it.
Yeah, and
And
it's not for everybody, of course, though. Actually, and
right,
we struggle, to keep even in the work that I do here and stuff like that. We struggle to keep some of the younger people because they want the excitement of the coasts, right? The
right.
California or the New York or the Boston or those types of things. They want the party atmospheres and things like that. And Tucson particularly. I mean, Phoenix has probably got more going for it, but Tucson particularly, I mean, you could argue it's still a little bit of backward. I mean, it's still a small town. It's a big town with a small town feel, but that's something I
It
like. I
is.
mean, I like the fact that I can wander downtown and I'm probably going to bump into somebody I know if I'm going out to a bar or, well, I mean, obviously pre-COVID, right? But then this whole conversation is just pre-COVID as the prequel, right?
Yeah, it is.
But I mean,
Long,
it's kind
long
of nice.
ago.
It's
Well, and I mean, that's kind of how I approach it with when I'm answering. I even in conversations with my wife, who is from Tucson, and could not wait to get out. And that was one of the jokes that I would say to anybody, for people who were born there. Uh, Most of them that I've known who have been born and raised in Tucson, they're ready to leave. They want to be around grass and rain, and that's fine. For me, I really, I knew when I got there that it fit. I think that's kind of what for those people like yourself and me included, there's a certain sense of, uh, I don't know, it just seems right. It seems like an interesting setting. Like going to Gates Pass was, I think, sort of the moment that road. There's a winding road to a scenic, historical space called Gates Pass in Tucson, Arizona. Look it up, Google it. And seeing all the saguaro cacti, and going through a deep valley and getting to a place where the sunset, again, big sky, lots of colors. It seems so otherworldly, and it just felt like home. Yeah, I get why you would fall for it. And you kind of, you mentioned maybe you were destined to come here. I don't know if you actually, like, what was it that made you want to, like, coming here, living here, that's one thing, but what can you narrow down, like, something that made you feel like you needed to be, more than a work visa and a green card? Like, what made you want to stay here? What made you want to be an American?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons. I guess I think from an employment perspective, it makes things a lot simpler. So there's certainly that piece to it if you're just a citizen. But I think again, fundamentally, you're either part of something or you're not part of something, right? And so me being able to be a citizen, that again, the guy who the judge said it right, vote, right? You then get a chance to have a say in what is going on in the country that you're living in. And so I think that's probably the most important thing, is being able to do that. And from my perspective, I want to stay here. I want to live here. I like it here, and I'm happy with the opportunities that America provides me. So I mean, I know a lot of it sounds very cliched, right? That oh yeah, it's a great freedom of America and this, that, and the other, and I'm following in the footsteps of founding fathers and coming from the old country over here and things like that. But I mean, it's a cliche, becomes a cliche because it's a cliche, right?
Well, yeah, the
And
appeal's there, right? You're sort of representing that, Reagan-esque shining city on a hill kind of moment, right? And what we represent as far as our story is one that's appealing to all kinds,
yeah,
whether
interestingly,
it's,
somebody, a friend of mine, because actually the first time I came to America was in '93. In fact, right when I'd finished college, and me and two friends came out here for a month, and we traveled around the East Coast. We did 10 days over on the East Coast, New York, Niagara Falls, DC, Raleigh, North Carolina, for some random reason. But I think that was because a friend of mine, one of the guys I came over with, he had a girl that he knew in North Carolina, so that was probably the reason. But
it's
and
always a reason, right?
Right,
There's always a girl.
and it's a pretty good reason. But and then we came over to the West Coast, and we did California, we did Yosemite, Vegas, and then we came through the desert, through Flagstaff, down through the desert, and just recently, it was only like about 6 months or so ago. One of my friends who came with me on the trip, he sent me a picture of me standing next to a saguaro, and he goes like, "Hey, Graeme, was this where it all started?" And I'm like, "Well, maybe it was. Who knows, right?" So, but of course, the UK, we got loads and loads of movies. So, there's all the old movies. So I think I'm okay saying cowboys and Indians movies, but I
Sure.
don't mean that in a derogatory sense, of course. But that's truly how they were depicted back in the
We're not that
60s and
woke right now, bro.
70s.
It's cool.
Right? Yeah. But got to qualify it. But anyway, John Wayne and all these kinds of things, and then Clint Eastwood
Belcrum.
with his again, as they were called, spaghetti westerns.
I
Back
love spaghetti westerns.
and so again, there's just a draw to the kind of like, particularly the Southwest, right? I mean, there's so
Yeah.
much history and so much kind of like um, well, it's hard to to have the right terminology, I guess, for it. But the Southwest, I think, is where I gravitated towards. It wasn't like, oh, I've got to come to America to live in New York or Los Angeles. I could never do that. It's the desert that
No, it makes sense to me because that's not too many degrees of separation, because you can say that if to much of the world in a big portion of the 20th century, the cowboy, the image of the cowboy, the mystique of the cowboy is really a lot of that representation of the American persona, and easily you can say John Wayne. And the birthplace of the cowboy, if you believe it's Texas, you're wrong. The cowboy is from Arizona, and look it up. And I think that makes sense, and it's kind of burned into your psyche, right? The whole uh Tombstone and Wyatt Earp and the Dusty Trail and the cacti and all of it's there. And your mentioning of the saguaro makes me just I remember you I remember helping you plant the saguaros in your backyard.
yes.
And I mean, I can only imagine how big they've gotten now, but it's sort of your symbol, man. It's like your totem.
Well, no, it is, and yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, within a year of moving over here, I signed up to a cactus rescue organization here in town. So I go out there with my my fork and my pickaxe and whatever, and we go rescue saguaros and other cacti, barrels and ocotillo and all of these different cacti from areas before they get turned into building sites for new houses going up. And then we
Right.
give them a new lease of life around there. So it's just kind of like me doing my bit. So yeah, my little cookie cutter neighborhood house has now got 7 saguaros in various parts of the property, and yeah, so that's
They're
just my
stoic.
thing.
They're stoic, monolithic things, and I love them. I just, in all contexts, for me, it was always, for a lot of kids, I think of the '80s and earlier, it was Wile E. Coyote and, and the Roadrunner running around the desert, and you kind of imagine these things, whether they're real or not. I didn't have any exposure to the desert until I started moving west. I'm from the region I'm in originally. Definitely didn't travel as far as you did, but I fell in love with it too.
But
It's cool that
America,
you're. Go ahead.
America itself, I mean, just think about what I grew up with in terms of TV shows, right? I mean, all of the TV shows were from America. Even like I still remember watching Dallas and Dynasty, although we called it Dynasty, of course. But hey, it was,
Aluminium
yeah, aluminium,
dynasty
but Dynasty. But
advertisement.
and then of course there was Baywatch, and then there was Beverly Hills 90210. The glorification of
Oh yeah,
America.
now you're getting into straight America stuff.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. But even like Starsky and Hutch, right, and all of these types of things, Chips, back in the day. Again,
Let's acknowledge your love affair with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's just get that out of the way.
hey,
Okay,
Yeah,
we
something I still don't really understand, but let's get into that.
yeah. Well, no, and you know what? Yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. When did that first come out? Like 97, 98, something like that, was it? I think.
But very
Something
American.
like
Very.
that.
I mean, it kind of fits into that same like ballpark, right? I mean, you're talking about a very um uh like American style show
It's
in
brilliant.
terms of how it like goes into the world and
And I
whatnot.
mean, Joss Whedon is probably one of the best. Was he? Did he produce or direct that show? I don't remember now, but
I believe both.
yeah, he might have done. Yeah, and but I mean, he just a classic. I mean, the fact that he created like a Buffy language, like yeah, so it's just like yeah, like
You see, I want to
there's
make fun
like
of
the
your
things like
taste in television right now, but the fact that you love 24 as much as I do kind of evens out. It evens
yeah,
things out.
yeah, no, indeed, but no, I mean, again, you're right. I just the UK there was although there's some fabulous UK television shows and arguably a lot of them are way better than some of the American counterparts. But the
Agreed.
UK kind of grew up, particularly through the 90s and yeah, probably the 90s, a big decade of just seeing how great life was in America, through the kind of Baywatch and through the Beverly Hills 90210 and this, that, and the other. So yeah, I mean, it's a pull. And I consider myself lucky to be here, but lucky, but also you create your own luck, right? And so I wanted to come here,
Yeah,
and
I'm
I
with
did
you on
what
that.
I needed to do to make it happen.
Luck favors the prepared. I love that statement. I want to touch on that because you mentioned one of the things I guess admire about the way you approach your sort of everyday life is you do get involved. You do go out and become part of the cacti rescue and for things that you care about or things that you've studied. And you're an individual that I think I don't know too many people that I would say fit the term classical education, but you're a musician and you have a skill set with music. I'm part of a symphony orchestra, if I'm correct. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I am, but I was, but
Well, not
obviously
COVID, like right
yeah,
pre-COVID.
yeah, pre-COVID, yeah, but
Probably
actually,
hard
yeah,
to
two
play a
orchestras.
trombone through a mask.
Yeah, right. Well, they created ones that have zippers, but that just seems a little bit too S&M for me, so I'm not sure I
Little
could do
little too
that.
kinky, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah, no, yeah, actually, two orchestras, and in actually just a couple of years ago, I actually auditioned. I sing in the choir for the Tucson Symphony Orchestra as well, so Tucson Symphony Orchestra chorus. But I'm also play trombone with the Southern Arizona Symphony Orchestra and the Tucson Repertory Orchestra, and love it. And, music's really been my passion, I guess, since I was at the choir school as a young innocent choir boy.
and that's I want to touch on this because I remember being in London for a friend of mine's wedding, and where were you a choir boy,
Yeah,
Graham?
I was a choir boy at Westminster Abbey, so one of the big ones in London, maybe
Unmistakable.
maybe the big one. I don't know, but our rival St Paul's is probably the other big one. But yeah, Westminster Abbey is where they do a lot of the royal weddings. Not all of the royal weddings. I might have sung at a royal wedding had Lady Diana and Prince
Ah.
Charles decided to actually get married at Westminster Abbey versus St Paul's. But I'm not bitter and twisted about it at all. So,
Uh, well, we're not bringing it up because you're upset. No, we're just going to let that go.
yeah,
Um,
but
I will say one of the things, you and I met. I have we had a mutual connection with a friend that was somebody that you were involved with. But I remember one of the things, yeah, I can honestly give you credit. You didn't introduce me to curry and Indian food, but you did introduce me to more of the depth of Indian cuisine. And I remember those first, the fact that Tucson even had a curry house that was respectable, and special shout out to Saffron in Tucson, Arizona. If you are in Tucson and you have even the slightest love for Indian cuisine, you must go to Saffron. It was a place that the three of us, Brando, Graeme, and myself, would go every Friday for years and years, and Graeme would hold court basically and start ordering things that I don't think the chef thought anybody was going to order. You were giving him pointers on how to bring some of the curry that you grew up with, and a lot of things. Now, am I wrong in saying that the national cuisine of the UK is curry? Basically,
yeah, pretty
right
much.
or wrong?
I mean, I think it is the number one dish in the United Kingdom is Indian food because
Because it's
it's great.
delicious.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, English food. I think a lot of people will say over here is bland, which I think is a reasonable way of describing it. Although there are some great things, I'm not going to bash
There
it.
are,
I'm
there
not
are.
gonna lie. Every time I see like a Yorkshire pudding on a cooking show, I think, "Wow, that looks really weird. I want to put it in my mouth."
Yeah, yeah, indeed. There's a
If you had a nickel, Brando, if you had a nickel
Yeah.
for everything you said that about,
yeah,
you
right.
crazy bastard.
But no, I mean, I think, and again, actually, my favorite Indian restaurant in the UK. Well, I say Indian, I'm using the term very generically because actually it was a Bangladeshi restaurant, and there are
Ah,
probably as many Bangladeshi restaurants as Indian restaurants in the UK, if not more. I don't know that though, actually, but there are a lot. And actually, it goes back to the days of the British Empire, right? I mean,
yeah.
British Empire was across the globe, and a lot of Indian and Bangladeshi people migrated to the UK as a result of that. And so set up, there's a lot of communities over there now, and so there's a lot of food. But the food is adapted because, like, British people like gravy, right? We like gravy. So so a lot of the sauces, like the chicken tikka masala, is not a classical Indian dish. It's a dish that has been made, is Britishized, if that's not even a word, but you know what I mean. It's The chicken tikka is something that's very familiar to Indian people, but the tikka masala, adding the sauce to it, is something that traditionally for the UK. But yeah, no, I mean, but what I will say, Charlie, is that I didn't have my first Indian cuisine experience until I was at college, and so I was a late developer. A lot of people have been eating it for years, but I think I'm making up for it now.
Well, I'll say that it was I love uh, so much about, I grew up wandering around five-star resort hotel back halls and into their kitchens and getting basic instructions from chefs on how to cook and do things, because I just was bored. My mother happened to be in a position of power in those places, so I got a lot of access, and I like playing with knives and fire, so it worked out really well. I love to cook and prepare all kinds of different cuisines, and in all that time I had never been aware of how much just was going on with the flavors of curry. I would almost argue that there's a lot of similarities in um like you could almost say that Creole and gumbo are like the American curries in terms of how they come across and comfort and the spice and the complex flavors. I just had no idea that Indian food had so much to offer. And you taught me a language. You taught both of us a whole language surrounding Indian food. What was the first one? It was chicken tikka patia, and
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
I just remember now. Of course, you get past the first couple of years,
Oh,
and we got
you
to a
just
place.
triggered me in the best way possible.
It's so good, and I just remember it got to a place where it felt like royalty. Right, we would go in, sit down, the chef would come out, we would order off the menu, you leading the way, and we would get introduced to a few different cuisines, and then you fast forward another 18 months, and all of a sudden these items that you were consistently ordering for us, we would have start seeing them on the menu,
Yeah.
as a regular piece. So it felt like, man, you hit Tucson, and you had an impact. You changed how the food went. Yeah, and that classical education, that diverse education, I think it seems like it's led you to be able to enjoy much more of the city than probably more of any city really, but much more of the city than I think your average person is, because you're involved with so much. I mean, you're doing the symphony orchestra, you're in the cacti rescue. You've also got your day job, as it were.
And invested in a winery as well. So there you go.
Well, and I'm building to that too. I want to talk about that for a second. I mean, is that a random thing? Usually when you hear about someone who's involved with wine, they're passionate, they're reading and learning and educating about the regions in France, and et cetera, et cetera. What drew you to, first off, before we even get that, can you explain what people are going to think first is, why is there a winery in the desert?
Well, yeah, I can try. I don't know whether I'll have a very good answer for it, but it's fascinating that I think there are actually vineyards or wineries in most of the states of America. So not just Arizona. But there are certain things about the climate, but also the soil within Arizona that makes it very good for growing grapes. Down in Sonoyta, that's the area where Arizona Hops and Vines is located. The
Which
winery
is your
that I'm
baby?
involved in. But yeah, Arizona Hops and Vines is my baby. But in Sonoyta, but there's actually three regions in Arizona. There's Sonoyta, there's Wilcox, And then actually a lot of the grapes are grown in Wilcox, even for Sonoyta, because it's a very good growing area down there. But then also up in Cottonwood and Sedona in the Verde Valley, up north of Phoenix. What is it? Probably like an hour and a half, a couple of hours drive north of Phoenix to get up into the Verde Valley. So there's actually three distinct regions, and the soil's really, really good. The climate's good because it's higher
Nutrient
up in
rich.
Tucson. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so so all of those things, and I think the one of the things we struggle with, not struggle with, is of course the environment here in Arizona, because it can get very hot. The Sonoyta, Wilcox, Verde Valley, they are actually a higher altitude, up at 4,500, 5,000 feet, so that helps with the cooling down of the grapes overnight, which helps with their production. But what you'll find is that the wines here can be quite high in alcohol content because of the heat creates a lot of sugar and therefore a lot of high alcohol content. So it's a different, it's different, but Arizona's really getting on the map now with wine, which is exciting. And Hops and Vines has really helped kind of like rejuvenate, I think, the area, put a lot of like fun into wine tasting. We pair our wine with chips. So it's kind of like it's
And
different to your.
events. You guys host such awesome and grand parties and events to bring people into this
Yeah,
smaller areas from the cities. And I remember the 20s, 30s themed, or 30s, 40s themed party
yeah,
that we all went to. It
the
was
speakeasy. Yeah, it was cool.
Speakeasy was so much fun, and the
Yeah.
wine is spectacular. To this day, I have one of your products, the Fluffer,
Oh yeah.
which I believe is a champagne. Am I right?
Well, it's a sparkling.
A sparkling,
It's a
right?
Moscato, basically. Yeah, but yes.
I still have the like the sticker from the bottle on the side of my small cappuccino machine, because that
Espresso machine.
espresso machine. So yeah, it's just got the
Say it right.
fluffer hand and the everything on there. I'm so shout out to Arizona Hops and Vines. I mean, if you visit, go there. Do you guys have an? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if you have online ordering. I don't even know if that's possible, but
Yeah, they do have
people should look it
there
up.
is online ordering. There's a lot of back and forth depending upon which state you live in
Sure,
as to whether you can ship and all this and the other. And that's actually one of the interesting things is that the wine business is almost held back by the legislation within the country that really dates back to prohibition times. I mean,
that's
it's
interesting.
very, very interesting that hops and vines, right? The hops, we were wanting to do beer and wine, but we've had so many difficulties with just the legislation associated with being able to brew beer and make wine on the same premises and serve it in the same building, because you have to serve them in different buildings. There's a lot of things that go into these types of things, and it's very antiquated. And it would behoove the governments to look into those types of things. I think to just help small businesses do what they want to do, which is, yeah, make some money, but also, yeah, let people have fun. But yeah, no, I mean, it was it's cool. It's fun, and you asked how I kind of got involved in it, and it's like, yeah, I love wine, right? I mean, who doesn't? There's so much stuff that goes on with winemaking and the taste and the smell, and oh god, it's just great. But ironically, just getting involved in that was more just about me drinking the stuff than being a shrewd businessman, and just hanging out down there and meeting the cool people. And I think I was probably subconsciously looking for something that was completely different from my work life, right? And so, being part of the wine crowd down there, it was a lot of fun, and it is a
Well,
lot
and
of fun. And
yeah, it's fun. It's really fun, and it kind of represents that entrepreneurial spirit that I think is, look. I mean, if I have to be completely honest, when I was a small time remodeling contractor, you gave me, we were friends, of course, and you gave me a lot of opportunity and were, trusted me to do a lot of upgrading and work on your house. And I always enjoyed the collaboration with you, uh, because it was a good back and forth. You were very. I always appreciated the fact that you took your time coming to a decision, but once you made a decision, it was concrete, and you were very receptive to a lot of creative suggestions and what we could do. And in a lot of cases, our collaboration really turned out some beautiful work. You know, your home is one of those homes I'm really really proud of having worked on, and thankful for your like your trust and continued investment in me and my business and allowing me to work on it, man. It's you know, I would be wrong not to acknowledge that piece of our relationship too. And our, you know, you have that ability to have a clear boundary of, you know, where our friendship uh ended in the boundary line and where the professional relationship was. Like it was very clear to both of us, and it always worked out well. And you know, I think that kind of speaks to who you are, you know, whether it's Hops and Vines or my old business in, you know, artisan design. it it's always something I've been grateful for, man. I mean, I love your home.
Yeah, well, I'm clearly I do too because I'm still here
Yeah.
after 11 years after I moved here. I'm still sitting in this house and I'm enjoying it. I mean, there's definitely times when I think about, man, maybe it's time to have something bigger. And yeah, wouldn't I love a pool and that type of thing? But you know, fundamentally, I this house does what I need it to do for me. And normally, you know, my house is functional, right? I mean, I like to be comfortable in it, but I'm here to kind of sleep, eat, um, and then get ready to go to work and then travel, right? I mean, you know, I like to travel the world. I like to travel the country. And so I like to put my spare cash, if you like, into traveling versus having a huge mortgage. And that's just the way it is.
Well, I mean, it's really speaks the house. You know, I feel that way about my own homes, but a lot of my approach to anybody's home was finding a way for it to really fit that person's character, right? Like your home speaks to who you are, whether it's the flow and design or how, you know, those choices all sort of fit, as opposed to being I saw this on a show. I really want, um, you know, the same thing I saw them put in. I want Wayne's coat, or what was the one from the Gaineses? Man, I forgot the. Thank God I forgot the term because I was so sick of people asking for it. You know, it was always a process of figuring out what fit the best for just you, and you know, the style, colors, design, all of it. And it was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun to work on your house.
Yeah, no, it's good. And yeah, the results are here to tell. And, you know, even to the backyard and getting the saguaros out there and landscaping and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a great home. I think anybody will be happy to live here, but currently I do, so I'm in good shape.
So, what instruments do you play fluidly? I mean, I know trombone, I know piano.
Yeah, that's it. Really, you know, singing. Obviously, it's kind of, you know, I first started the piano was my first instrument back in the day. I started playing piano when I was 6, I think, and then when I went to the choir school, Westminster Abbey, they required you to play a second instrument. So um, I just kind of like the look of the trombone, and so started playing that when I was 8. And I'm happy that I play the trombone, being part of brass groups and things. You know, brass players are, I'll say it, brass players are the best. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people out there who play other instruments who think I'm full of shit, but I can say it because those are my experiences. But yeah, so I play piano and trombone, and that's really, you know, that's really it, Charlie. I don't dabble in a lot of other stuff, to be honest with you. So that keeps me busy and keeps me happy. And I've thought about learning the guitar and things like that, but I guess just happy with what I'm doing.
No, I respect that. I mean, I think it's a lot of what made, you know, again, pre-COVID, it's what made this city enjoyable is, you know, brass in general. A lot of New Orleans jazz
Oh
is the
yeah,
horn section, you know, and you know, it just has a persona all to itself. And I kind of get where you're coming from. I love a lot of different music, but that music has a certain spirit to it. I don't play an instrument. I kind of wish I did. My wife plays the piano, but it's interesting because it touches on something I wanted to cover with before we go. You know, mentioned classical education. You know, without getting too in the details, you know, you work with a lot of more uh, one side of you basically your education, your upbringing was very much a bilateral approach on how you nurtured your brain, right? You have clearly put a lot of time into your creative side, and then your career and whatnot is really built more around numbers and structure and design. And it's like, do I got sort of a odd philosophical question. Do you feel like having that musical and artistic and creative influence in your life at an early age and then kind of maintained throughout has benefited you intellectually, cognitively? Do you feel like you're a smarter and more diverse person? And this may seem like a simple question, but do you think it's a necessary ingredient for getting into those higher levels of being an intellectual, just being a smarter person, more able to learn and whatnot?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a very interesting question. Oh, I should say, sorry, I wanted to get the NPR in. That's a great question, because like on NPR, if you know that nobody's ever asked a bad question in the whole history of NPR, because everybody
That's true. I listen to it all the time. You're
yeah,
absolutely right. That's
that's
a
a
very
great
good
question.
question. That's
So,
very, very interesting.
but it is a good question because it's not an easy question to answer. I mean, I think music is something that's always come very naturally to me, whereas the other aspects of education not so much. Albeit that math, or maths as we say across the pond, but math and music actually do go hand in hand, right? They are stimulated by the same side of the brain, I believe. And
Oh,
so a lot of people you will find that are good at math are also good at music and vice versa. And actually, in music, there is a lot of mathematics within music, be it tuning, be it harmonics, be it waveforms, be it attack, decay of the notes, those types of things. And so there is a lot of math and music, lot of similarities perhaps between some of those aspects. But in terms of like, did it help with other aspects? I think it helped because more perhaps because you had a release for something else that maybe helped you focus on other areas. I wouldn't necessarily say that music is what made me good at other things, because I'm not sure that I was great at other things. I was good at other stuff, but I wasn't great educationally. But I was good educationally. But I think it's perhaps the music providing you uh, the separation from everything else, the way of getting out of yourself, right? To be able to focus in on something. Perhaps that was something that was more important. And if I can just say, it was interesting just like a month or so ago. It was maybe 6, 7 years or so ago. A friend of mine from my work, I went over to his house for I think Thanksgiving or Christmas, and his wife's grandson or something like that was struggling at school, and he played trombone. And so I said, "Oh, come over, and I'll give you some pointers on the trombone." And so we played a little bit, and I played some of the trombone. I pointed out some things to him, and he was struggling with school in general. And actually, the guy who I work with, he remembered this more than I did. I said his wife was like saying, well, basically, he's really struggling with school, and apparently the philosophical advice I gave was just let him focus on the music, and the rest will take care of itself. And lo and behold, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, he's in marching band, playing the tuba, actually, not the trombone now, doing great. His grades have picked up. He's doing fine, and he's setting out on life. So I mean,
that's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it actually made me feel real good. It was just kind of like I didn't even. It wasn't even something I had to do too much. It was just trying to provide my words of wisdom on music, and I guess from that perspective, music has helped him be successful, but mainly because by focusing on the music, everything else is coming along with it. So, does that answer your question? Probably not, but
No, it actually is
philosophical
a
point.
kind of a poetic way to answer the question. I think it gets to the point, and it's a good way to respond to that. I like it a lot. Um, that's great, man. That's great. I kind of thought that maybe I would try to get into some sort of roguish comparison between dating British women and American women, but we'll have to save that for another time. I'm sure it's a lot of fun and comedy there. A lot of good times, but I think this is probably a good place to just say thanks, man. This has been a really good conversation, a lot of fun, way to reminisce, and I learned a few things about you, bro.
Yeah, well,
I,
great to hear.
I yeah, I tend to sometimes I pull from a questionnaire from somebody that I enjoyed their program for a long time, and I think the questionnaire is just fun. Um, I was a big fan of James Lipton and Inside the Actors Studio. I think because the format of that long interview program was meant to, kind of get people to reveal things about themselves in a very charming and insightful way. And I think it's a lot of what I'm approaching and trying to do with individuals that I've known and that I'm interested in that aren't, super famous Hollywood peeps, because I don't know any of them. Uh,
Not
but
yet.
not yet, at least, right? But I think I'd like to wrap this show with a few of those questions from the James Lipton Bernard Pivot questionnaire. But before I do that, Brando, is there something we're missing? Did I keep you out of the loop, man? Do you have something you wanted to throw in real quick?
Yeah, I totally raised my virtual hand when you were talking about cowboys because I have a very interesting connection to the Old West.
Throw it down.
Uh, my birthday, well, the shootout at the OK Corral happened on my birthday.
That really explains the angst.
It does.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You've carried it with you this whole time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You were one of those people. You're probably one of the guys who got shot down. You had a red sash. Of course, that's straight from the movies. I don't know.
I
if
was not a
that's really
cowboy,
true,
no.
but pretty funny. I'm sorry I missed the hand, man. Okay, Graeme, we're going to do a simple questionnaire. If you just pass on the question, you can just say pass, but simple answers, and it'll kind of go pretty smoothly, pretty quickly, and it's a lot of fun. And then we'll kind of wrap it up. Are you ready?
I think so.
All right. Pretty simple. Here we go. What is your favorite word?
Beer.
Nice.
Knew that was coming.
What is your least favorite word?
Sober.
It goes hand in hand. What turns you on?
Pass.
You're a smart man. What turns you off?
Pass. I'll keep you guessing on those.
I like that. What sound or noise do you love?
Wind chimes.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Dogs barking.
I'll be sure to tell Issa and Maisie.
Well, mainly if they're locked in a garage next door to where I live, but
Oh, call back.
Wow.
Props on that. I was annoyed by them too, man.
Yeah.
My God. I could talk a lot about that guy keeping his dogs in the garage. Okay, moving on. What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
I was almost going to bet you'd go with bullocks, but I'm not sure if that's curse. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, I would like to be a professional musician,
Okay.
but it doesn't
I'll
pay
take
well
that.
enough. So, hey,
What profession would you absolutely not like to attempt?
teacher.
Mm.
All right. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Would you like poppadoms and chutney?
I love that answer. Maybe a Peshwari naan.
Yeah, right.
Graeme, man, you did me a huge favor. You did both of us a huge favor by being a guest on the show. obviously we love the hell out of you, man. Your family, you're a brother, and I miss you guys. I'm far away, but hopefully be back sooner and sooner. I feel like the pressure to come back all the time. Thanks for being a guest. Thanks for being so open and coming on and having some fun with us on the show.
Yeah, of course. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great. It's just been cool just chatting and bullshitting and just like old times, right?
Yeah,
We
it
could
really
probably
is.
do this for another hour and a half and still not get to the end of what crap we need to talk about. So, yeah,
It's something I
a lot
have
of fun.
to work on because I had to start going with like a time limit because I would keep going. Believe
He's
me.
done it in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, clearly he's been on the phone with me a few times where I've done it. Believe me.
We didn't even get
Well,
to the pre-turkey or the au jus sauce on mashed potato or anything. So
Or the why
we didn't get to any of
or
that.
why the Green Bay Packer fans are, basic human garbage.
said the Vikings fan.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
look,
need to talk about the
You shut
Packers,
your
so I
mouth,
guess next
Charles.
time.
you shut your mouth, Mister. Yeah. Well, Graham, I mean, look, I'll extend the invite now if you already know it's coming. We do like to try to do a little bit of an overtime segment where we have people back and we just kind of go right into talking to them for another hour and a half. If you're interested at any time, you let us know. We'll jump on here and just kind of have it all be about whatever the hell we want to talk about: sports, bullshit, women, the whole thing.
Yeah, maybe I'll have some better answers to the questions that time around as well. So
I liked your answers, man. I think they were really fitting. I think they fit really well, and I'm glad that I went with the questionnaire. Sometimes I don't, but I have a hard time improving on those questions, and I think that they're timeless for a reason. But hey, stick around for a second while I close out the show, and thanks again, Graham.
yeah,
Really appreciate
thanks.
it.
Thanks to you guys. Great chatting with you.
Call me about a curry tomorrow, buddy.
Yeah, we'll do.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed a lot of that. Brando, thoughts, closing thoughts?
No, not a lot of closing thoughts. Always good to talk to our boy G Money.
G Money, Grizzle. Yeah, I like Grizzle a lot. Thanks a lot, guys. If you think about it, of course, I'll go through the whole spiel.
Like, subscribe, and rate these
Give us
podcasts
5 stars.
on your preferred platform. Don't forget to ring that notification bell, be part of the notification squad, and I don't know.
I know it's really fun to go through that spiel though. But look,
smash that thumbs up, that like button.
Smash! I like the smash the like button.
My mouse cost $100. I'm not smashing anything.
That's fair. Now, whether you're listening to us on iTunes or Spotify, we hope that you will keep following us. We try to put out an episode every week. We hope you like the content. If you like some of this content, take a look at the website at www.ruminationsradionetwork.com. We have a pretty good variety of podcasts and very talented hosts that we're sure you're going to find a lot of entertainment and interest in and want to spend your time enjoying a lot of these talented individuals' perspectives and what they have to say. I'm Charlie Triple C. That's Brando over there. And we thank you for joining us on Brevity Box. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Brevity Box, brought to you by Ruminations Radio Network. If you like this cast or want to find some other great topics, join me, Optimist, on the Retro Futurist Culture podcast for great discussions on all things retro future. Check it out at ruminationsradionetwork.com.